Error woke up on the floor, his vision dark at first but soon began to clear up. The floor itself wasn't really that rough on him. In fact, the floor had purple carpet covering it. He looked around in confusion, wondering where he was. The room he was in looked like a really huge closet. It had some boxes with strange yet colorful clothes inside that a drag queen would wear. There were shoes lined up perfectly on the shelves, a large mirror, more girly and expensive looking clothes, and at the end was a vanity dresser with a mirror that had lots of makeup equipment on it. Error wondered if he had landed into a little girl's closet, judging by the fact the place looked like one. When he got up and the dizziness wore off, he lifted his arm to touch his head to relieve pressure or check for bumps. However, once he did, he realized his arm was wearing a sparkly purple glove that was long enough to almost reach his whole arm. He then looks to his other arm, realizing it too wore the same glove. But that's not all. He also realized he was adorned in a red sparkly dress that looked like something Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit would wear, leg exposed and all. He then realized in terror the size of his chest. Though he was just relieved upon looking inside that it was just tissue paper. He sighed and said, "Oh, thank the stars, I thought I somehow grew boobs." He then headed for the mirror quick. Once he saw himself, he sees he had high-heeled red shoes on, fishnet stockings, pink lipstick, bright purple eyeshadow, blush so extreme that he almost looked like a circus clown. Error now had the face of annoyance and said, "The heck? This is not my color." He also sees the floppy kind of hat ladies wear in the beach. He didn't like it though, cause of how annoying it is when it droops down. Great, not only was I kidnapped, but I look like the fashion police's vomit. Error said with a majorly offended tone. Having enough already of whatever is going on, he tries to open a portal to leave. However, his magic appears to not at all be working. He was confused and tried again, but to no avail. He then decided, screw it, and headed for the door to try and break it down. But just when he was in front of the door, it opened. The person whom opened it surprised him. It was none other than Dream, the guardian of positivity. However, Dream was also wearing a dress. But his was yellow with pink polka dots, a pink ribbon around the waist, the skirt having white lace around the bottom. He also had a small yellow hat on his head with a pink striped bow around it with fake birds on as decor. His shoes were slightly smaller high heels. He also had light pink gloves on. Makeup at least looked better than Error's. A simple bit of yellow eyeshadow, soft pink lipstick, and yellow blush with a bit of glitter on them. It took a moment for Error to process, so he stood there with his mouth agape and super confused. Dream only gave him a bright smile and greeted the darker skeleton. "Hi Error," Dream said happily. The response brought Error back to his senses and he replied with a freaked out tone. "What the? Dream? Did whoever catch me caught you too?" Dream only responded with a giggle, his hand to his mouth in an amused way, thinking Error's question was a silly one. "No silly," Dream said cheerfully. "It's almost time for my tea party." Error's eyes turned into cartoonish dots at the response. Once again, trying to process. Dream then proceeds to explain. "It's a monthly thing. I draw a name from the box and then I invite whoever I pick to my tea party." "Invite?" Error responded with annoyance and disbelief. "Dream, you literally kidnap." Before Error could finish, Dream grabbed his arm and pulled him along without a care. Of course, this caused Error to glitch due to his touch phobia and thus he was unable to respond properly, so it made it easy for Dream to drag him along and into a different room. The next room they came into was quite colorful with such a strange and childish design. One would think it was a children's playroom. The walls were painted sky blue with clouds, rainbows, unicorns, a sun with a bright smile on it. It might as well be a child's playroom. Who knew Dream liked this kind of style? Error managed to see the style of the room despite his glitching vision. He was still trying to reboot himself, but Dream holding his arm still was making it hard for him to calm down. Ahead, he could see a pink table with chairs of a similar color. He knew at least 3 people sat on those chairs. He could see their silhouettes, but he can't make them out too well due to his vision messing with his sight. If only Dream would just let go of his arm already. Thankfully, Dream finally did once he sat him onto his own pink chair. Error then began to reboot. He could hear though a gasp of shock next to him. Once his vision no longer glitched, he looks over to see Undertale Sans. Red, for short. He too had makeup on, that looked way too extreme, even for a drag queen. His dress pink and his floppy hat was more made of straws. Error cringed at how badly it clashed with the outfit. Oi, don't look at me like that. I know I look like I should be arrested for being a fashion disaster, but that doesn't matter right now, Red said when he noticed Error's cringing. Error rolled his eyes but gave a small nod of agreement. So, you got dragged into this tea party nonsense too? Error asked with a deadpan and annoyed look. But Red did a shushing motion with his hand. This made Error raise a brow. Red looked terrified and nervous, shifting his eyes a bit. The sharp-toothed skeleton let out a sigh of relief that Dream didn't hear. Error said, "Listen Glitches, you can't mock Dream's tea party until it's over," Red said in a low but slightly panicked tone, as though trying his best to not be heard. "What? Why not? It's just Dream," Error responded with confusion. Red looked like he was sweating bullets as he grew more nervous. Then he said, "Error, look at the other 2 guests here." Still confused, Error turned to the other 2 he couldn't see clear before. But now that he did, he was once again shocked. Sitting on the other 2 chairs was Underswap Sans, Blue for short. The other was Cross. Both of them wore dresses of their own. Blue's was dark blue with lighter blue polka dots. Cross's dress had whites and black stripes, plus a large belt around the waist and angel wings on his back, which are props. "Hi bestie. I can't believe Dream drew your name out this time." Blue said happily that his so-called bestie was invited. Blue: "Well, I guess that makes sense I suppose, since you and Dream hang out, but..." Error was cut off by Cross suddenly responding. "Hello new pretty guest," Cross said with an incredibly wide smile. In fact, it was so wide it almost looked like it could break the limit of his face. When Error looked to him, he quickly noticed the details of Cross's face. There was yellow dust seeping out of his eye sockets. His dual-colored eyes were a bright yellow, but they were hazy, almost as if Cross was under a trance. In fact, even his tone was unsettling when he spoke. "I'm so glad we have more guests. I do love a good tea party," Cross said while clapping. The happy tone sounded so forced that Error and Red cringed just imagining how painful that must feel. Error then said in a more low tone now, "What the heck is going on? Is Cross okay?" He responded to Red. He didn't have much to say on Blue since Blue didn't have the strange yellow eyes and he was just naturally happy. "You see Glitches, Cross earlier was..." Blue then cut Red off to explain cheerfully. "Crossy was being a bad guest, so Dream fixed him," Blue said with an amused chuckle. "Fixed?" Error responded with panic and confusion. Red tried to shush him and explain better. "Whenever Dream has these tea parties, when someone's misbehaving, Dream you see, he goes a bit nuts and uses a weird yellow powder on them to make them much more agreeable to what he wants." Error's jaw nearly fell to the floor in shock. That sounded horribly evil. He didn't expect Mr. Sunshine himself to even be capable of that kinda crazy behavior. "Okay, joke's over," Error said with a nervous chuckle. "You got me, okay?" He refused to believe it, especially with how ridiculous it sounded. "Oh, are we telling jokes now?" "EA," Blue said happily. But Red shook his head. "Look Glitches, I'm not." Before Red could finish, he silenced immediately when Dream came. His face looked oh so innocent. "Jokes? I heard someone say something about jokes. What jokes are you guys telling?" Dream asked with just such a warm expression, which of course made Error believe much less Red's nonsense story. "Well, you see, Red was just telling me you did something to Cross," Error said with a chuckling tone while Red was sweating so hard, his badly applied makeup melted a bit on his face. Error though still found it humorous. Until Dream said, "Well, Cross was being a naughty party guest, so it was only fair." Then Dream eerily just giggled. Error's smile quickly disappeared. He had stopped laughing. His face slowly formed into shock. "You're not being serious, are you?" Error asked with concern. Dream just tilted his head, still smiling. "What do you mean?" Error then raised his voice. "You know exactly what I mean." Red just tried to stay silent as the situation was getting worse. Dream stopped smiling. His smile formed a menacing frown. His face shadowed a bit. "Do not raise your voice during my tea party. That is impolite." Dream's tone was now a low and frustrated one with even a hint of a growl. It even made Error froze in place for a moment. Blue was just happily fiddling with his teacup unaffected by anything. Neither was Cross, whom was just clapping happily. Error, out of panic, decided to try to leave, even slamming the table with frustration. "I'm not staying here." He slid his hands off the table and tried to make a run for it towards the window. The heels he wore were painful to run in. Dream sighed in annoyance, smiled to his guests saying, "I'll be right back, my dear guests." He then gets up. Rather than run though, he walked to Error's direction. When Error had his hands on the window, he screamed in pain. All of a sudden he had jolts of electricity run up his body. It didn't damage what he wore, but he felt the pain and thus fell to the ground, shaking. Once Dream reached him, he put a foot on top of Error's chest, not even caring that Error was in immense pain. Instead, he mocks Error's attempt. "You only have yourself to blame, Error. Here I am, being nice to my guests and treating them with such hospitality. And you want to leave so soon? How disrespectful." Error tried to give a snarky reply, but he was still in too much pain and stuttering. Didn't help that Dream's foot felt like it could break his ribs at any moment. "Don't speak," Dream commanded, pressing his foot down harder, the heel digging in. Error let out a pained yelp and tried to stay silent. Not even the tissue paper was helping shield his chest from Dream's painful foot and heel pressure. Dream then had a cheerful smile again and said, "That's better. But you were still a very disrespectful guest. So, I'm sorry, Error." Dream chuckled and took out a purple bag from his dress that had a gold ribbon around it. Error shook his head, his expression pleading. Dream ignored him and took a handful of gold dust. "Whoever said you had a choice?" Error could only let out a single tear before Dream tossed the gold dust straight into his eyes, unable to close them in time. His scream echoed and made the birds outside fly away. A couple of hours have passed. Dream was happily pouring tea to Blue's cup. Blue giggled and said, "Thank you, Dream. You make the best tea." Dream then says happily, "Thank you, Blue. You made a really good one last month though." He then gave Cross a chocolate chip cookie. "Here, sweetie. I made this with extra chocolate. Just for you." Dream said as Cross took the cookie and said, "Thank you so very much, Dream. You are such an amazing host. I love you." Dream blushed with another giggle. Then he turned to Red, whom now has messy makeup from all the sweating. He practically looked like he melted. "Oh dear. Red, do you need any help with your makeup?" Red immediately shook his head and grinned nervously. No, it's fine. I'm fine. I look great regardless. Haha." Red was shaking but kept up the wobbly smile. Dream was satisfied anyway and shrugged. Then he looked towards Error. "Would you like more tea, Error?" Error smiled wide, his blue lines now a bright yellow with a bit of dust seeping out his eye sockets. Although his eyes were already yellow, they were even more bright and even glowing. Dream did not hold back using that much dust. Then, Error said, "Yes please. Thank you so much, Dream." Then he giggled. Dream's tea party was perfect.